I'm Ann Charles.
I'm Linda Quinlan.
That must be that I'm Keith Gosland. Today is Tuesday, February 28th. This is all things LGBTQ. We are already in a silly mood, so sit back and get ready for fun.
Well, I have less fun headlines than I'd like to.
Then we're moving to Linda.
Well, I have some good ones in the beginning, but then it goes downhill. Same-sex marriage now legal in Northern Ireland. South Korean transgender soldier pleads to stay in army and is refused. She plans to sue. Chick-fil-A quietly closes the Scottish restaurant after a boycott over anti-LGBT funding. Scottish man has become the first person with HIV to fly a commercial plane. I have a picture of him for you to see. His name is James Bushy. And if I have time, I will talk more about his story. And good news, HIV infections among gay and bi men fall by 71% in the UK, and it's attributed largely to the use of PrEP. Bad news from Bali. Indonesian rights body slams LGBT raids. What happened is, I remember I told you about that rapist in Manchester who raped 190 people. Now it's 195 people. The authorities in his hometown in Indonesia are now raiding and, starting a whole big oppressive wave against LGBT people there. Little America's gay refugee episode is banned in 11 countries. Welcome to Chechnya, a film review. Now, stories I'm not going to get to. Czechs public says that 71% of people support same-sex marriage. So, Swedish crown princess makes history with the first ever visit to an LGBT organization. And I have a picture of them. It's Crown Prince Victoria, her husband Daniel. You can pretty much see who they are. They look very royal. They're posing with the youth president, Joran Rostam. He's third from the left. And the president of this organization, Deirdre Palacios. So there they are. The royals initiated the visit. Everyone's very pleased. This is Sweden.
Good.
Rent rise forces an LGBT bookshop out of Paris's gay district, the Marais. The bookstore, I have a picture of the bookstore now. Les Mots à la Bouche, France's best-known gay bookstore. The rent's so high they have to move by March. And the residents are heartsick, and the Marais apparently is being totally taken over by corporate interests. You can't park, the streets are so quaint that you can't park your limousine if you're a high-price, high-end shopper.
Airbnb and all that too, right? For the area.
A Doc Martin store is slated to go in to where this
that's
historic
terrible.
bookstore was. And the human rights group in Europe welcomes a landmark European Court of Human Rights judgment on online hate speech in Lithuania. So a Lithuanian same-sex couple kissed on Facebook, put it up, were virulently harassed, and the Lithuanian government and police did nothing about it. So now they've been reprimanded by this European court. So,
A lot of good that'll do.
a lot of bad news.
Yeah. And we have news from the national news. And Bernie Sanders is being blasted for taking support from Joe Rogan. Anti-LGBT Archbishop Charles Chaput has been fired in Philadelphia and replaced by a more liberal clergyman by the name of Nelson Perez. Chaput has said that there are no gay Catholics if they are not celibate, and they cannot receive communion. The family of a gay teenager, Jacques Corias Taylor, is not satisfied with local police and the probe in his death. We'll have a little more about that. Kentucky, A Christian is sued for outing a teenager over a rainbow cake and shirt. Alex and Stacy, a lesbian couple, met on Jeopardy and got married. And actually, they were on the same
Episode?
They were on the same episode. Stacy won, and a romance ensued after that. So, and I have
They
a picture
both
of that.
won.
I have a picture of Stacy and Alex Trebek.
I hope they don't have a competitive relationship.
They probably do. I think they're in different fields, though. Alex was invited. He didn't go. Kim Chi and Ms. Cracker will be the first drag queens in a Super Bowl ad, and Katie Sowers will be the first woman and first lesbian coach in Super Bowl history. That's going to be very exciting. And then I have gay commentator Brad Palumbo says that leather is debauchery and destroys LGBTQ progress. I thought you might be interested in that.
Not if done properly.
Yes. So I'll get more to that if I have time. Miss Utah, Rachel Slauson, is the first out bisexual competitor in Miss USA. Lesbian DJ quietly makes history at the Grammys. Tracy Young won Best Remix Recording. And then we have the Pete Buttigieg story, which I'm sure everybody has heard about, but we'll talk about that a little more. And also how Trump had Roy Cohen's room fumigated when he left. So we'll have a little more about that and a few other stories if we have time. So, Keith.
How do you follow that? So, this week's trivia question. This week marked a 75th anniversary of what? And of course, we'll have some commentary. I'm going to go over events that are coming up in our region in the near future, and a very exciting event in White River Junction that we might hear more about later on in the show. I'm also going to talk about a little bit about an event that's not happening. And then I want to talk some about the legislative session and, oh my gosh, what are they doing? So what do you got, Ann?
Well, I've got marriage in Northern Ireland. That can't be bad. As we know, it's finally recognized. It's been opposed by the right-wing DUP party. But same-sex couples can now register to marry. The first ceremonies will take place in February because you have to give 28-day notice. For couples who are already married, their marriage will now be legally recognized. Those who are already in a civil relationship will not be able to convert it to marriage at this stage. The Northern Ireland office is set to begin a consultation later this year about converting civil partnerships and the role of churches in same-sex relationships, same-sex marriages, that is. Heterosexual couples will also be able to enter into civil partnerships from today. Same-sex marriages have been allowed in England, Scotland, and Wales since 2014. Because of the 28-day registration period, the first weddings are expected to be on Valentine's Day. However,
Go ahead. I'll ask it after.
well, I have a picture right now of Danielle Doherty and Emma Bradley, who are standing outside the Free Dairy Corner on their wedding day. They got married in Ireland, but they're from London, in Southern Ireland. And now they've expressed their joy. They live in Northern Ireland in Londonderry. They've expressed their joy that their marriage is now legally recognized in their home city. Danielle Doherty and Emma Bradley got married in County Donegal in 2019. It just shows you the change that's happened over the last few years from it being a dream to reality, Ms. Doherty said. We are not undermining the value of civil partnership, but to us, we wanted to be married. We would have loved to have gotten married in Derry. We love Derry, but it was never an option. But here they are. Now it is. So that's very good news.
That's very good news. I was going to ask you, is Northern Ireland a protective, like Bermuda? So if England gets, or already has a gay marriage, or right? So I guess Ireland and Bermuda, which are different countries. I mean, I don't know whether would they automatically get it when England passed it?
No,
I mean, because I know Bermuda didn't.
No.
No, okay.
No, certainly not. They're separate countries.
Well, I think they're protective. You know, they're part of Britain.
Well,
You mean they're part of the United Kingdom,
Right.
but are they an independent country
They are.
within the United Kingdom, which means they would have to adopt their own laws?
Except don't they have members in Parliament like Scotland and Wales and,
That's for the United Kingdom.
right. But don't they make those, never mind. I thought they made laws and then it had cover this whole area that,
We'll talk over dinner.
all right,
well,
go ahead. You have time for one more story.
it's a sad one from South Korea. This transgender soldier, and I have a picture before you. Her name is Byun-hee Soo. She enlisted as a man and underwent a sex change last year. She pleaded fearfully to be allowed to stay in uniform after the military decided to discharge her. And the picture shows her kind of crying during her statement. The country remains deeply conservative about matters of sexual identity and less tolerant of LGBT rights than some other parts of Asia, with many gay and transgender Koreans living largely under the radar. Byun-hee Soo, a staff sergeant in her 20s, enlisted voluntarily in 2017 and went on to have gender reassignment surgery in November in Thailand. She had expressed her desire to remain in the Army, but a military panel ruled on Wednesday that she will be completely discharged. I'm a soldier of the Republic of Korea, she said, her voice breaking. In Korea, it's 2 years mandatory military service. I saw a clip that I can't show you by an anonymous gay member of the military in Korea, talking about all the fear that he lives with. But one question that may be in your thoughts right now: where in the world can transgender soldiers serve? They could in the U.S. until Donald Trump banned certain transgender people from the military. The ban was upheld by the Supreme Court last January, although legal challenges have been continuing in the lower courts. The policy prohibits transgender persons who require or have undergone gender transition from serving. There are nearly 9,000 active duty transgender troops, nonprofit groups say. In the UK, transgender people are able to serve openly in the military. Last June, a transgender former Army officer was awarded a medal for services to the LGBT community in the military. Other countries to allow transgender people to serve openly include many Western European countries: Australia, Canada, New Zealand, Israel, and Bolivia as well. So it's very
thank
sad.
you. Yeah, that's. Well, I'm going to do two politicians in a row here. Bernie Sanders has taken support from Joe Rogan. Rogan is a sports commentator and podcast host who has a history of making anti-LGBTQ comments, transphobic and misogynist and racist remarks. He objects to puberty blockers for young people. He doesn't think that trans women should be in women's sports. And he joked about Hillary saying that she was performing oral sex on a man to get money. He's also been recorded using the N-word. So I think Bernie should maybe reconsider that endorsement, don't you think?
Yes.
And then we have the poll in the bar. LGBTQ bar. Very disappointed that Pete Buttigieg's campaign for canceling a fundraiser over a dancing pole. The fundraiser was to take place at the Dark Lady, a gay bar in Providence, Rhode Island. But 20 minutes before the bar's staff was to arrive, Pete's representatives asked the bar to remove the pole. The Dark Lady owner refused, as the bar was part of the history. It was part of the history of the bar, and I guess it'd been there for a very long time, and so he wasn't going to take it out. So the Buttigieg entourage went across the street to a straight bar for the fundraiser. So I have no objection to pole dancing, do you?
No.
Not if done properly.
I don't think I've ever seen, maybe I have seen a pole dance.
And another politician.
As opposed to having done it.
Correct.
Okay, here we are.
And another politician,
Oh,
Pence, our vice president, celebrated Martin Luther King Day at an anti-LGBT sermon in Memphis, Tennessee. The preacher blasted LGBTQ people and ended his sermon by saying, "There are no LGBTQ animals in nature."
False.
So I guess he hasn't
we're
seen.
introducing him to some penguins.
That's right. He hasn't doesn't
And the
watch our
swans,
show.
and the swans.
And the goose. There
We're
was
just
a-
starting
You
with
know?
the penguins.
I mean, really. So that just shows what he knows. And this is a very, I find this really, really annoying. But Florida Vouchers for School channels $129 million to support anti-LGBTQ school people. That was just last year. So $129 million went to schools that are anti-LGBTQ.
They have vouchers that you
Yeah,
can
give
then
vouchers.
take to a school run by a community of faith
But this is our money.
that they can take.
I know.
Very.
They need to put a stop to that. If you're in Florida, please put a
Do
stop to
something.
this.
Yeah.
Lil Nas X is a multiple Grammy winner. The black gay singer took home Best Music Video and Pop Duo Group Performance with his country hit Old Town Road with Billy Ray Cyrus. So that was good. So I think we will go on to,
Find out what's happening in our backyard that you might want to attend, such as on Monday, February 3rd, 6:30 at the Kellogg Hubbard Library, sponsored in conjunction with the UU Church, a LGBTQ plus book discussion, Girls Made of Stars, and I'm waiting for Professor Charles to review it for me. Put this on your calendars. Friday, February 7th, 8:30 a.m. Meet me at the State House because we're going to go have coffee with Lieutenant Governor David Zuckerman in his office.
that's going to be fun.
Sponsored by.
Well, he has an open office every Friday, but this one in particular is being sponsored by the LGBTQIA Alliance of Vermont, and is specifically for LGBTQ plus citizens
Yes.
to come in and tell David what our needs are. So also put on your calendars for Tuesday, March 31st, again, meet me at the State House outside the cafeteria for LGBTQ plus Visibility Day.
And what time is this?
Be there by 9. I mean, no, looking at coffee, muffins for legislators, prime time to grab them. As they're reaching for that free muffin, you got them. The event, that's not happening. over the weekend, people noticed a flyer in Burlington. What are the unforeseen consequences of the transgender agenda? If you are a woman, gay man, lesbian, child, or parent, or cherish free thought speech, you have a stake in this conversation. Please join Gender Critical Vermont in the first of our series of discussions. And as one might imagine, there was a flurry of activity.
It blew up.
People called Gender Critical Vermont a hate group promoting hate speech. They denied that. There was pressure put on the Fletcher Free Library in Burlington to cancel the event. They said no. That looking at sort of the library policy, and this is on a national level, they acknowledge the First Amendment and free speech. And as long as you are not engaging in a hateful activity. However, Gender Critical Vermont canceled the meeting, citing their concern for the safety of the participants and the public based upon the response they were getting from the greater community. And as all of this was flying, this comment rose to the surface. As James Baldwin said, we can disagree and still love each other unless your disagreement is rooted in my oppression and denial of my humanity and right to exist. Looking at this issue from all angles, there was enough threats and hate speech being thrown about that it's time for us to really look at what we're saying, to whom we're saying it, because we got bigger problems outside our community. Why are we engaging in fights among ourselves? So.
And that James Baldwin quotation reminds me of a friend of mine and co-host on a local television show who thinks of certain Trump supporters that way. How can you support someone who wants, who has with their foot on my neck? So it's timely.
Yeah.
We'll be talking over dinner.
Yes.
Yes.
So what you got, Ann?
Well, I have some information.
Uh-oh.
Yes. Today, the British Isles contain two sovereign states, Ireland, alternately described as the Republic of Ireland, and the United Kingdom of Britain and Northern Ireland. These participate in shared institutions created between Ireland and the United Kingdom under the Good Friday Agreement.
Okay.
I'm hoping it's kind of general, but I'm hoping that.
Good, thank you.
All right.
We rely upon you and your iPhone.
No kidding. It's the technological age. So Chick-fil-A closed its Scottish restaurant. In 2017 alone, the fast food franchise contributed over $1.8 million to anti-LGBT organizations, such as the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, which requires staff to accept sexual purity and oppose same-sex marriage. The founder of Chick-fil-A was also known to fund organizations that supported gay and transgender conversion therapy, while his new CEO's son claimed that same-sex marriage was an act of arrogance against God. This Scottish man who appears before you, James Bushy, has become the first person with HIV to fly a commercial plane. He fought it for a year. He finally has a license. He talks about his decision to disclose his HIV status publicly. He was interested by that, influenced by that rugby player, Gareth Thomas, whom I showed sharing his statement about being HIV positive in September 2019. So now he can fly. He's been hired finally, although a lot of restrictions apply. He can't fly into Saudi Arabia, for example. Nevertheless, this case is a vital step on the road to ending discrimination against people with HIV. Under the Equality Act of 2010, HIV is classified as a disability, granting people with the condition the protections of all disabled people. Aviation was the second last employer that still discriminated against people with HIV. The armed forces still do, he said. So he can't fly solo. He's been hired by Logan Air, and he's still restricted until some rules change, but he's happy to be in the air.
That's significant.
It is good.
Yeah. I
Bali?
think we're going to have to move on.
I have another segment though, right?
No, this is it. Look, we're almost out of time.
Oh, Linda, may I just take a little time?
Quick.
I want to introduce you to this wonderful clip. First of all, Little America's Gay Refugee episode is banned in 11 countries. It's about a gay Syrian man who tries to come to the United States. 11 countries have banned it. It is an Apple TV show. I have a picture before you of it. And the person who wrote it and directed it is pansexual and is really disappointed because he wanted to share a message, but he has renewed his commitment to telling the gay Arab story, even though this venue has been cut off. Welcome to Chechnya is David France's new movie that was just premiered at Sundance. It's a new documentary, a searing probe into the government-directed prosecution, torture, and killing of LGBTQ citizens of the Russian Republic, chronicling the selfless work of rescue activists. Let's see a picture now from Welcome to Chechnya. very,
Nice clip.
very chilling.
Yeah.
It's coming to HBO in June. It's 107 minutes.
We'll have to go to someone's
Oh.
house to watch it.
No, we'll have to get HBO.
I don't think so. But anyway, just quickly, I'm gonna skip some of the other stories. Hopefully, I'll save them and get to them next week. Where does the time go? So, this is about Harry Cohn.
Harry Cohn.
Harry Cohn.
Roy Cohn?
Roy Cohn. Ugh, see, you rattled me. Though known for publicly outing government employees in the LGBT community, Cohn's homosexuality and promiscuity were an open secret, according to this new book that's been written. After Cohn took on Trump as a client, the much-feared attorney turned his client into his prodigy, schooling him in the art of lies and smears. Cohn ultimately died from AIDS in 1986 while publicly declaring he was battling liver cancer. Shortly before Cohn's death, Trump hosted what seemed like a farewell dinner at Mar-a-Lago for guests to pay tribute to the dying lawyer. And only 3 weeks before he became president, Palazzolo and Rothfield allege that Trump recounted the tale of Cohn's visit while making plans for his administration at Mar-a-Lago. This perhaps was evoked by the resort and Cohn's last visit there a few months before he died of AIDS. Trump recalled to his guests that after Cohn had left, he had to spend a fortune to fumigate all the dishes and silverware.
So he told everybody this 3 months before he assumed office.
Right.
Because the actual state dinner.
Was
Going to be at Mar-a-Lago.
right in
Okay.
'86.
And so the farewell to Roy Cohn was 86 or
Yes,
87.
yes.
Okay.
But he was bragging about how he had to fumigate. So anyway, that's a lovely story. So
So when we're here for our next filming, hopefully I will be reporting on if the governor vetoed H-107, the Family and Medical Leave Bill, very watered down. What we were looking for, particularly for LGBTQ plus protection, was the individual medical leave, which is now an optional opt-in for employer and employee versus mandatory. There are not enough votes to override a veto at this point based upon roll call. And then minimum wage, which as opposed to the $15 per hour by 2024 is only $12.55 guaranteed by 2022.
and this is passed or being argued?
No, this will be going to the governor, and we're waiting to see if he will veto it. This is the versions that came out of the committees of conference. The other piece of legislation we are going to be watching that came out of nowhere is House Resolution 7, 54 sponsors. That's significant, from all parties. And this is an apology to families and survivors from eugenics-driven sterilization in Vermont, and it specifically identifies Vermont's Abenaki and French Canadian communities as having been subjected. Now, we're about to go into a scintillating interview done by our own Ann Charles and Jarvis Green for the Jag Fest 4.0.
And it's
They will be showing productions such as Demons, I Can Hardly Wait. The problem with magic is a curious thing, or superheroes can't fly. And from their promo, JAG Productions is pleased to announce JAGFest 4.0, the 4th annual festival of new works in African American theater, presented February 7th through the 9th at Briggs Opera House in Wright River Junction, and I'd slurred, and Bentley Theater at Hopkins Center for the Arts. The week-long festival of stage reading brings 30 Black theater artists to the Upper Valley from across the nation for a week-long JAG experience. Now sit back, relax, and listen to Ann and Jarvis.
I'm honored to be here with Jarvis Green, Artistic Director of JAG Productions in White River Junction, and artist around Vermont and elsewhere. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you.
Yeah, thank you.
Tell me a little, if you wouldn't mind. Let's start with your background. You grew up in South Carolina?
Yeah, I grew up in a town in Anderson, South Carolina, and moved to Seattle after college. Lived in New York for quite a long time, and moved up to Vermont 8 years ago. Yeah.
So you're living in Brooklyn.
Yep.
What drew you to Vermont?
Oh my God, it's kind of a long, sort of deep story, but a friend of mine, Jonah Hankin Rappaport, him and I met out when I was living in Seattle, and his girlfriend was going to college here, and he was making this sort of like big life-changing moment by saying like, I want to be committed to my girlfriend, and I'm gonna live and be where she is. And so I was sort of going through this like moment in my career and my personal life in New York where I just really wanted a reset. And so he called me. He was like, "Hey, I'm gonna be up in Vermont for the summer, and it will be really great if you want to come hang out because I'm making this really, life-changing moment, and you're really close to me, and it would just be great to like help with the transition." And then I also was like, well, I'm having big transitions are happening in my life as well, so I would love to just come up to Vermont. I had no idea where I was going, but I knew that I would be like with like really good friends. And he drove across the country and picked me up in New York City with I forget how old she was at the time. She was like 2 years old, a pit bull rescue puppy, Sasha. And we drove up to Vermont.
I wanted to ask about Sasha, actually, now that you mentioned her. Is she still going along?
Yes.
Strong?
Yes.
She like Vermont, seems to.
Oh, Sasha loves Vermont. I have two now, Sasha and Jameson.
Both rescue pit bulls?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, they love it. They love it here. I mean, raising a dog in the city is no fun. They get used to it, but the moment Sasha got to Vermont, she was just running everywhere and like having like a beautiful time. So yeah, she loves it.
How did you become involved in theater? Was this in South Carolina?
Yeah, this is in South Carolina. So I started singing in the church. I really was like, I didn't know what this gift or this thing was about. I was just like noticing how people respond to my voice and my sound, and it also was like a way for me to kind of I was ADHD and just this very sort of eccentric and young boy. And so there was a woman who was going to my church. She said, "Hey, you should audition for this boy choir that like travels the country because I think you have a beautiful voice and I think you could get in it." And so I grew up again in Anderson, lower class, poverty, and so I didn't like have any idea what this like boy choir meant. I was just like, whatever, sure. So I went to go audition for this boy choir, and the music director was like playing notes on the piano, and he would ask me to sing the note, and he would play a note, I would sing. He would play a note, I would sing. And like he immediately was like, I would love to have you in the choir. You have perfect pitch. And so then I was like immediately sort of brought into this whole new world of like the performing arts, and also just like being like respected and admired for something that I didn't really sort of understand or people couldn't understand. So in that moment, I was able to sort of channel all of my sort of unique and eccentric ways into my creativity, and it was through singing at that time. And so I was in this boy choir, and there was a performance that we were having somewhere across the country, and this woman came up to me. She was like, I noticed you out of everybody in the choir. I mean, it was like 30 singers, you know? I was like, really? I'm like, thank you. And she was like, you should, have you ever thought about performing on stage and doing theater? I was like, no, I haven't. So I got back to Anderson and immediately started auditioning for some performing arts programs and theatrical things. And then from there, I was accepted to this like performing arts school, called Project Challenge Playhouse, and that's where I learned to do like musical theater and all of these sort of, I learned about Shakespeare and all of the great like American playwrights, et cetera, et cetera. So from then on, I had my, that's where my love for theater was like created, and that spark ignited in me just this idea of like becoming a character and exchanging stories, and seeing how in that moment like an audience can just be completely immersed in a moment that you are holding, and that this like collective group of storytellers get this opportunity to engage with community members and things like that. So that's how I got started in theater.
You directed Choir Boy, or you were in it at some point in your career?
I directed Choir Boy. Yeah.
Never seen it.
And
you did it here in Vermont too.
Yeah, in White River. Yeah, it's a beautiful piece. It's written by Terrell Alvin McCraney, who he wrote Moonlight, or he did the screen adaptation for Moonlight, and he's the head of the playwriting program at Yale. And so that was the first production that that I launched for my theater company, JAG Productions, which was in 2016, so 4 years ago. I started the company, and Choir Boy was the first show that we did. And it's about these young boys, these young black boys who are in a boarding school, and it's a coming of age story, and it was sort of set with these like spirituals that were sung a cappella on top of all of this gorgeous text. So the singing sort of propelled the storytelling, and it was a form of storytelling that I've never really seen before on the American stage when it comes to Black folk. So yeah.
It was playing in New York for a while too, with a fairly short run, and it was acclaimed. I think it was nominated.
It was just recently on Broadway. Yeah, it was on Broadway. In fact, I just had an event last night in New York for East Side's Table, which we can talk about later. But one of the actors, we did like this Black Theater Night preview, which is basically where like any and all theaters that are doing anything, off-Broadway theater companies that are doing Black theater productions, this one night we all get together to sort of preview what's happening in the winter and the spring, and East Side's Table did a little excerpt, and we spoke about the play. And so we were like backstage, and I was talking to Marcus, who's in the play, and this woman immediately came up to him and was like, "I know you!" And he was like, "Okay." But he was in Choir Boy on Broadway, and so that's what she recognized him from. So, yeah. Yeah.
Well, we should go back to East Side's Table then, since it's come up and it was so wonderful. Unfortunately, the audience has missed it for now, but
yes.
Cherry Lane Theater.
Yeah.
Tell us.
Yeah, so East Side's Table was a play that was developed at our New Works Play Festival called JAG Fest. So every year, for the past 4 years, we have invited 30 artists here to White River Junction to develop these new plays, so a solo piece or a full stage production. And so I, as the company, I select the plays, and then I give the playwrights sort of resources to develop these new works by hiring a director and some actors. And then at the end of the week, it culminates into these stage readings. So it really gives a playwright the opportunity to sort of get underneath the play and sort of see what is happening within it, and like it takes them out of their like isolated worlds of writing these plays and giving them the resource to sort of bring this thing to life. So East Side's Table was at JAGFest 2 years ago, and it was like one of the most like talked about shows in our festival. Like people just like immediately were drawn to it and like sent emails about it. And so I kept having conversations with Nathan Youngerbird about the piece, who is the playwright, and we sort of decided to move forward with producing the world premiere of it in collaboration with the Cherry Lane Theater, which is where the show originally started in their mentor project, which is similar to JAGFest, where Cherry Lane pairs a playwright to a sort of famous mentor. Like his mentor was Stephen Adley Girgis, who won a Pulitzer for Between Riverside and Crazy. And so he developed it at the Mentor Project as well before he brought it to JAG. And so we just thought it would just be a perfect sort of collaboration by coming together to produce for the first time the world premiere of this play. So in October, we had a full production of it. We were able to see it. Thank you for supporting it.
That was wonderful.
Thank you. And in March, we're gearing back up again for an off-Broadway run.
At the Cherry Lane Theater.
At the Cherry
in the
Lane
Village.
Theater in New York City. Yeah, just very exciting time and kind of crazy because we've only been in existence for like 4 years, and so it's just like wild. Yeah. So I'm very excited, and I'm very grateful that our community has supported it, and I'm really interested to see what happens with it, like in a broader context, so that more people have access to this really, really beautiful, magical story about these young men and their joys and their fears and their families. And I think that we live in a time right now where there's just like a lot of pain, a lot of violence, a lot of death, and it just kind of gives people an access to honor the people, honor the stories that we all know, but it also gives us space to kind of like heal in a different way, where you're mostly just connected to these people, and then you sort of learn more about their lives and what happened to them. Yeah.
One thing I love about JAGFest is there's a talkback after
Yeah,
each show.
yes.
And the actors talk about it's like a retreat, how
Right.
electrifying that week is when they all come to White River Junction and work on, and you can, as an audience member, it's very exciting to see the works developing.
Yeah,
And talk
yeah.
to, I'd highly recommend it to
Yeah.
all.
Yeah, I mean,
to
I
everybody.
think particularly like Black folk don't have access to space and quietness, and as like Black queer artists, like you're in cities, right? And so to get away from the city, to unplug in a company, with a company that's like ran by a Black man, a Black queer man, the effects and the ripples that it has on their like creativity and their work, and to be able to use the resources that our community has so graciously given us to support these artists in these like, really incredible times where they're just like writing such thoughtful, meaningful, important work that is like shifting us all, and to be able to hold them and give them space to do that work away from all of the noise is really beautiful to witness, for sure, and which is why I love Vermont. Like it was just like that. I was able to just think. I had more space in my head to be thinking about my place in the world and what matters to me and the stories that I want to tell and the people that I want to like represent and what and the future that I want to see that isn't here yet.
In the minute and a half we have left, believe it or not.
Oh, no way.
I
That's
know,
crazy.
it always happens.
Oh my God, yes.
What do you want to tell us about JAG Productions, and what message do you have for our audience?
Yeah, so JAG Productions is a company, yes, it is about stories about Black folk. But I think what is so special about it is that it's centered in like love. And I think that there's space for everyone to come and have a seat at the table and to witness very different stories that a lot of people around here haven't had an opportunity to see. I think first and foremost, it is for and by like Black people. But that's not to say that like, my heart isn't open and we're not available to other walks of life and other races and things like that. So I think that oftentimes I'm so clear in my mission that people think that it's not for them, but it is for everybody to come and see and to be, hear a different perspective and really and have a good time. Like I think that like our performances and the way I like to curate our community is like rooted in togetherness. So if you want to come and be baptized and showered in some love and see some good theater, come on down to White River Junction to our New York's Play Festival or anything that we do, and bear witness to the evolution of like Vermont and what we all are a part of. I think it's an exciting time for the state and our community.
Wonderful, Jarvis
Thank
Green.
you.
Thank you for coming.
That was a great interview.
Okay, now we need to book him now for a year from now.
And you're always good, but he was fabulous.
Hey, I mean, to listen to this man of color talk about creating an environment where communities of color can flourish and really invest in the creative process. Oh my goodness. And it's in White River Junction?
Yeah.
Right. We went last year. It was electrifying. It really, I mean, to watch theatrical processes develop and it's really, I can't describe it. You have to go, audience.
And we have our hotel reserved.
We have a hotel and tickets.
And tickets and everything, so we'll
Book now.
join us there, please.
Look for JAGFest website.
That's
And our
right.
trivia question, 75th anniversary, and knew it immediately.
I
This is-
didn't.
This was the anniversary of the Russians liberating the Holocaust concentration camp at Auschwitz-Birkenau. And the estimate is that over 1 million Jews went to the gas chamber in that camp alone. Why we should be concerned and pay attention is, as we keep saying, we were incarcerated during the Holocaust and concentration camps as well. There were an estimated 100,000 homosexual men who were arrested. 54,000 were convicted. Over 15,000 sent to the concentration camps. And we don't know how many survived because after the liberation, we were still considered criminals and still incarcerated. And to be noted, rather than homosexual men going into the gas chambers, we were worked to death and subjected to medical experimentation and genital mutilation.
Does that account for like lesbians too that might have been there?
They keep going back and looking for documentation of women who were interned in the concentration camps for being lesbian, and they can't find documentation because thinking about the German culture at the time in the Nazi regime, women really didn't have rights. They didn't care. The few documentations that they could find, women were put into the concentration camps for their unwillingness to submit to a man. And I think they found like nine cases that they could say this is what they thought were happening. Why we should pay attention? As a friend of mine pointed out, prior to the rise of the Nazi Party in Berlin, you could cross-dress in public as long as you registered with City Hall, so they had a list. We have marriage equality.
They have a list.
They have a list. So with that,
Oh, it's very apocalyptic.
Yes. I think we should all work even harder to resist.
Resist.
cutting it close.
I was going to read the whole plot summary of that Welcome to Chechnya. I had 3 pages.